good afternoon to you lovely people here at the Square in Brussels, and of course all of you who are still with us online, and a very, very warm welcome to these fabulous speakers who are sitting behind me. And we do actually have another further speaker who is joining us online. I don't know if you can see her yet. I can certainly see her. You can see my name, but I can see her on a return screen, so I am reliably informed there is proof that she is with us. So a very, very warm welcome to this closing session of this year's edition of Green Week. I am genuinely very excited about this session. It's a goodie. And if you're happy to be here, as before, hashtag EU Green Week, please do tweet. That would be wonderful. I am going to ask you to express your opinion, and those of you who are online, in a word cloud in just a moment. We won't take audience questions in the interest of time, and I genuinely think we're going to cover so much and enthuse you so much that you won't walk away feeling frustrated. So, very important to say that. I'm Katrina Sickle. I haven't changed since the other session, and we have 60 minutes together. But first, before I go any further, a word cloud, just to frame this so you can see a little bit which way the content is going. Slido, of course, slido.com, hashtag EU Green Week, that's our event code, and it's a word cloud, not a poll. Okay, so put in one word, it could be anything. We're going to see it hopefully in just a moment when you've got set up. No, somebody's logged out. Who's done that? Who is the culprit? Technically, just in the closing session. Okay, we're going to get there in a minute, but the question is going to be, and maybe we can even take it with raised hands, how does the environmental crisis, there it is, make you feel? I can see it on the return screen. So we got two words there, climate change, followed by sad. How does it make you feel? Optimistic, challenged, afraid, excited? Oh, doom, okay. So all of my positive words for opportunities are falling on deaf ears. Not that I'm responsible, okay. Confused, eager, overwhelmed, confident in man, neither of, well, could be both of you, but I think more generally humankind, hopeful, concerned, but a lot of helpless, sad, worried, frustrated, and anxious being the biggest word in the middle there. So I think we can kind of see the way this is going. Now, what is the link to the session context? Well, the session is called From Code Red to Code Green. And what we want to achieve by that is a kind of a shift. So what we're going to do is shift from a lot of the big picture stuff that you've heard throughout Green Week and kind of come in on a more granular level. And we're also going to shift from, well, what some of these words we've heard there, helpless, scared, hopeful. I'm not expecting you to all walk out of this room or away from your laptop screaming with joy, but hopefully kind of look and anchor yourselves more in some really brilliant stories you're going to hear of hope and of inspiration and of empowerment, and quite why they are so vital in this massive transition and the sustainability challenges we face. And the one thing I will say is that a survey published recently in The Lancet, 10,000 people aged 16 to 25 in 10 countries revealed that, well, they kind of echo what you've said in the word cloud. 45% felt the concern about the climate negatively affected their daily lives. 3/4 said they believe the future is terrifying. And 56% said, well, the word we had there, humanity is doomed. So instead of fear or flight or fright, what can we actually do individually, collectively, alongside political action? And so we are going to meet a few sustainability champions, and they're going to share their stories and their expertise with us today alongside, and I'm so delighted that we have Commissioner Sinkevičius with us in this closing session. And before I invite him to frame the session, I'm going to ask those lovely speakers to introduce themselves to you very, very briefly. So, Kate Raworth, you are online with us because you were horribly let down by Eurostar. You are Senior Associate at Oxford University's Environmental Change Institute and a Professor of Practice at Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. In fact, Kate is doing something fabulous with Amsterdam. A couple of words from you, please. Why are you on this panel?
Hi, great to join you. I'm here because I'm a deeply frustrated economist who believes that economics needs to be fit for the 21st century. And I drew a new starting point for economics that looks quite a lot like a donut. I believe that's why I'm here, because I think if we change the mindset by which we design our policies and run our lives, that begins to transform everything.
Thank you very much, and we're going to hear a lot more about that in a moment. I'm going to turn to this gentleman, who I don't know if you can see, but he has a large gold bee on his suit. That will give you a clue. His name is Paulius Czorkiewicz, and he is CEO and founder of Urban Bee in Lithuania. Over to you.
Thank you very much for hosting such a beautiful event. Yes, I'm urban beekeeper, and I keep bees on the rooftops of Lithuanian city buildings, and we change the mindsets of communities and societies by bringing people closer to nature, to bees, and letting people see the bees up close.
And you were involved in a very big bee project in the City of London, as I understand it, weren't you? And we'll hear more about that in a moment. Okay, sorry, otherwise I'm just going to hoover up all of the energy in the room. Over to you now. We have Kedibone Tziolan. She is CEO of a company called Ramtsilo. So this is a construction company. You're a laureate. You're a winner of various prizes. Honest to God, when I spoke to you online and in the speaker room, I'm not surprised to hear that, but in a couple of words, who are you, please?
Thank you so much, and thank you again for this wonderful opportunity. I'm Kedibone from South Africa, and I bring to you guys this baby of mine, which is why I'm here. In the manufacturing space, construction and manufacturing, we recycle plastic that we use as an aggregate to manufacture bricks that build homes, schools, and houses. Thank you.
And it's quite a story. This woman is a powerhouse alongside her sister, and your father registered you for a construction company. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that sort of catalyst for your sustainability actions and strategies in just a moment. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to invite you to just sort of give us a framework, a policy framing, and I don't know how you think, because it's very important, and you mentioned it before at Green Week, how the policy fits together with these kind of individual and collective actions. So let me give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think it's been a great couple of days, and it's been, the start was a very inspiring discussion with the youth, where they reaffirmed of their determination, and then we went through a very different policy areas, topics, from circular economy to pollution, biodiversity, climate, and what's very important and inspiring that those young people were from all over Europe, and they have a same vision of where Europe has to be in 2030, in 2050, and I think it's been discussed all through the sessions. But then, at the kickoff event, we had a special guests, minister from Ukraine, where as well I think we reconfirmed again that the Green Deal is an answer also in rebuilding wonderful Ukraine and rebuilding their cities and making them actually greener, and actually even correcting some of the past mistakes which were done during the Soviet times, when the areas of beautiful cities like Kiev were built. So I think this was an excellent event, going through the wide range of topics we are dealing with, and really showcasing the importance of the ecosystems that we all depend on. We will be talking about it today in a closing session a bit more. But most importantly, I think the message which I want everyone to sort of take with them, that in every area of the work that you do, you can do a progress. You can move, and we have these inspiring people today online with us, sitting next to me, who brings bees to the cities, and understanding a pollination and etc. Circular economy, which, again, the plastics is a big issue which is still ongoing and growing, and we need solutions. We need, of course, to fight a pollution at a source. I think that was a great achievement of UNEA 5.2 in Nairobi, but we still have a lot of work to do, so we need ideas and innovations like that. And then finally, circular economy, or overall, moving from linear economy to circular. And then I think, Donut Grove, which will be explained to us, this is a huge transformation. And when I think that we are doing here, all sitting from the perspective of environmental portfolio, this is even more exciting. It's not an easy way. It will take a lot of explanation, a lot of talks to be done, but I'm sure we are on a good path. So that was really exciting, inspiring days for me. I hope the same was for all of you.
Thank you. And I just, here we go. Here's a little bit of a sneaking in question before I come back to our lovely speakers. Of course, you are a lovely speaker too, Commissioner. And here's my sneaky question. When you highlighted, of course, all of these projects that are going on in individuals, and we had some great speakers at Green Week, do you think politics, the policy arena, is keeping up with the likes of these fantastic people that we've got here that are the drivers? That's for a beautifully concise answer.
No, I think never policies will be up to the speed of innovation, up to the speed of great minds of people, and it has to do a catch-up. But I always love the politicians who are innovators themselves and have a vision. And sometimes in politics there is that trick that to be ahead of time and to be too late is dangerous. And it's not always you found it resounding with the public. But I think what's very important that Green Deal and all the policies that we have talked about, they are actually they were brought by people, and this is the will of Europeans that we are implementing. It's no secret. The Green Deal was very much inspired by those people who were every Friday on the streets of different cities, spreading around the world, growing fast, and sending a very clear message. That was the inspiration behind the Green Deal. If we look at the policies that we implemented during the COVID pandemics, or even now during the war, we see the clear opinions of people that they want the Green Deal to be continued and they don't want it to be stopped or parked aside. So I think this is the most exciting part, and I truly know that innovators, they will do their role, and that's where the politicians sometimes need to catch up.
Thank you. So let's hear from some of these stories. Now, I sort of said, let's keep this to 2 or 3 key points, because this is about really inspiring and sharing what's happening from the ground up. So I think the first important thing, I'm going to start with you again, Kate, if I may, is what was that catalyst moment? I mean, this is your arena. So I don't know if you had some catalyst moment when you thought, right, I've got to just get off my arse and get going. But tell us a little bit. What was that spark? What was that driver? And how has it led you to where you are now?
I did have a catalyst moment. I was sitting at my desk in Oxfam, having returned in about 2010 after a year of maternity leave, raising 2 twin babies, coming back into the world of work. And somebody showed me this picture. This is the diagram of planetary boundaries and how we are overshooting it. And this had a massive impact on me. I literally viscerally felt it in my body, because as an economist, what this immediately told me was all of the talk about the economy and growth and the idea that we could just keep on going. This is science telling us the fundamental image of the 21st century, which is we are destroying the life-supporting systems of our planetary home. And to me, this is the beginning of 21st century economics. So I doodled on top of this diagram and turned their circle into a donut. I believe we need to start economics and start our vision for 21st century thriving with the realities of climate breakdown, ecological breakdown, and human deprivation. Let's come back. And I wrote a book, Donut Economics, which had way more traction than I imagined. And people then started saying to me, I love the book and I'm doing this. I'm putting it into practice in my town council, in my community, in my city, in my business. And the photograph you can see now is what motivates me. These are change makers from Philadelphia to Birmingham. They're all over the world, in South Africa, in Chile. People putting these ideas into practice, saying we are going to start with 21st century economics, even if it isn't yet in the legislation, even if it isn't yet in the school curriculum. This is where we must begin and make it practice where we are.
Thank you. So inspired. Well, no, I'm not going to use that word because it sounds so facile. Let me just actually hone in on something you said. Apart from the fact that your passion Absolutely, and those pictures demonstrate it. You call them change makers. Just before I come on to Paulius, you are doing brilliant stuff, aren't you, with Amsterdam? Or they're doing brilliant stuff with your help, or certainly inspired by your book, are they not? I mean, it's quite a strategy. And you were talking about working with cities.
Yes, so we work with any city, town, neighborhood, place that comes to us and says, these ideas make sense for us. So yes, it's happening in Amsterdam. They put the donut at the heart of their circularity policy. By the way, the Netherlands has a circularity policy that I think the EU as a whole should already have adopted. They say they're going to be 100% circular by 2050 and 50% circular by 2030. No city or nation can do this alone. We need this to be at least Europe-wide, and then we would begin to get the circular economy that we already know we want. So Amsterdam, yes, but other cities too. Glasgow, I'm going to Barcelona next week. They're doing it there. Copenhagen, Brussels, where you are, this capital region of Brussels has adopted the donut as a concept for its future. This is being picked up across Europe and around the world.
Thank you, Kat. And clearly you travel more than the Commissioner, because the Commissioner, every time I've spoken to him at this event, has said, oh, I visited there, I went there, but actually, I think she kind of tops you for that. I will come to you, if I may. I will come back to you in a moment, Kate, and come to Paulius. And again, so what was that moment? Because my goodness, your background is not at all in beekeeping. It's in finance, I think. So that's a journey that you've had.
Yes, of course. It was quite an interesting story, and I will try to keep it short. But it all began in a fast-paced, busy London city where I worked as a finance specialist, and I always had this eager to be closer to nature. And on one day, I visited Lithuania, my home country, and I visited this old traditional beekeeper. And I came there with a T-shirt, without any protection clothing. And from very young age, when I was a kid, my grandfather was a beekeeper too. But from very young age, I was scared of bees. I had a big fears of bees because I was always told to stay away from the hives. I will be stung, keep away. So when I visited this old beekeeper, he just said to me, come to the hive. And I was like, I had so many thoughts going through my mind, but I trusted him at that moment. I came to the hive. He gave me this full frame of bees into my hands. I hold this frame and I felt this soft touch of bees on my skin. That was the moment when I decided that I'm moving from bookkeeping to beekeeping. And nice. Currently I run a successful business in Lithuania. Throughout the whole Lithuania, we provide urban beekeeping services. And we educate people, we educate communities, and we are growing. We are growing into the Baltics and hopefully someday into whole Europe as well. So we have big dreams, and our key aim is to help the bees and build sustainable and mindful communities around us.
That's nice. Such a lovely word, mindful community. I sort of thought quite a few people in the audience would have a little tear when you said, and I felt the soft touch of the bees. It was just, I was just, fabulous story, fantastic. And we will hear more in a moment. I want to come to this lovely powerhouse lady at the end, Kiribone. So that is a fabulous story because, again, you come from auditing. Your sister comes from engineering. And you are just, streaking ahead. You've been helped to put on that path by your father, but he wasn't the sustainability guy in construction, was he? So tell us about your moment.
Not at all. So growing up, what we believed was punishment was our father, he had a construction business and he would take us to site every school holiday. So I was in boarding school. When I come back for the holidays, I want to rest. And now my dad is taking us to a remote place where we're going to watch him build a reservoir or housing. And this went on for years, from the age of, I believe, 10 until we finished varsity. And for some reason, I would always gravitate towards the office and help out with the business. And my sister would always be in the trenches or looking at the building go from foundation upwards. And we did not realize that this was the preparing moment in our life because opportunity made us very prepared in terms of sustainability. So in South Africa, we're from the township, quite poverty-stricken, the area we come from. So we got to interact with an elderly lady, and we got to understand how what she does, which is just collecting plastic, and it's a regular thing that happens in South Africa. We call these people waste pickers, and they do this thing without being asked. You know, they do this thing because they need money. And we got to interact with her, and we've always, my sister and I grew up wondering, how do people litter? Why do you litter? What do you not think of what happens to that litter? So our moment was when we got to understand how this elderly woman who had no other way of making an income has chosen to make a huge impact towards climate change, contributing towards the alleviation of climate change by just picking up papers that are left on papers and plastic that are just left on the ground. And we then started prototyping how we use plastic in the manufacturing of bricks, because it spoke to construction. We didn't want to move too far from what we know. And at the time, I was still working as an auditor in a different town. So every Friday, I'd go to work at 6 a.m. and I'd leave at 3 p.m., drive another 2 hours to the Free State, get there, change out of my auditor clothes, wear my PPE, and start manufacturing bricks. And this went on for 2 years before we had a product that we were confident with.
And there is the brick, which we forced this lovely lady to stick in her luggage. We literally forced her. But yeah, she has no other clothes with her, no other shoes, just the brick. Phenomenal. Before I just come back, and there are a few issues that I'm just going to pull out of what you've said, and I'll come back to you, Commissioner, in a moment. What I'd be curious to explore a little bit, and you can ping pong in here, is certainly, you know, the challenges of bringing people along in the different ways. That's something that I would love to touch on. How do you inspire them? How do you change people's minds? How do you get people to be as moved by a bee, or to be absolutely shocked in the way Kate was? How do you do that? And how is leadership a part of that? So what do you think makes that good leader? And the third thing that I wouldn't mind coming out of this is also any kind of evolution, particularly of this nature, changes you. So what have you learned from your journeys? That's what I'd like to know. I don't know, Commissioner, I wasn't going to ask you if you wanted to share a personal catharsis story, but I'd leave you to comment just momentarily on what you've heard, or even share something significant for you that keeps you kind of pushed and driving forward in the work that you have.
So I think what really keeps at least me, going forward and being inspired is people like we are sitting today. Like yesterday, I had a meeting with young people and so on. People who do the change on the ground. You realize that the policies that you construct, and they are it takes time to implement and so on. But there is already people on the ground doing that change and implementing it, and you just need to help facilitate them so that those conditions would be even better, and that they could scale up the change they are already doing and grow from a small country to Europe-wide business case, which is even more, probably staggering and impressive. But I think, these 2.5 years in this mandate has been a steep learning curve for all of us, operating in a constant crisis mode. And I think what's very important at the end of the day is really to be close to people, try to understand how people feel, and I think this was sort of really very much in the veins of this college, very much inspired by the Commission President, by the way, that really addressed, for example, young people, how much they lost of those 2 years, being in university. For example, I've studied my bachelor's degree for 3 years, so to lose 2 years of this incredible time, it's a big loss, and so on. So I think it is extremely important. Then you realize what really people want and what they need, and then you sort of can draw that mandate of your action.
Okay, that just make it sound so simple. I just drew that mandate for action on the back of a napkin and off we go. But if only it was so simple. But what I do appreciate is what you said, absolutely, that the Green Deal previously did build upon what you have seen and are seeing on the ground. So let us find out more. I said, can we start with that kind of how you bring people along? And I'll come back to Kate. You inspire a lot of change makers. It sounds like it's really quite diverse. So I'd like to have a sense of how you bring people with you, and not least because we heard I think it was when was the opening session? Yesterday, from the mayor who was from the Committee of the Regions, from the Environment Committee. She said, blimey, we do expect a lot from citizens in a very short time. So how do you bring people with you, Kate?
So at Donut Economics Action Lab, we've never once tried to convince or persuade or lobby anybody to engage with these ideas, because I'm finding that there is just a huge generation and swathe of change makers, people who are already waiting to create and live and make this new economy if only the conditions enable, if only the frameworks and the language and the possibilities are there. So people are coming to us. We welcome contact from any community group, from any city council, from any teachers who say, I want to put these ideas into practice. But here's what I've learned, that the most inspiring person for somebody to get into action is not me standing on a stage or on a podcast. It's somebody just like themselves who's already doing that thing they thought was impossible. So a mayor inspires a mayor, a schoolgirl inspires a schoolgirl, a teacher inspires a teacher. So what we do is work with those pioneers, and then we hold up their work and we make it visible, because they launch peer-to-peer inspiration, and they clearly unleash peer-to-peer permission to disrupt, permission to be the first mover, permission to question, permission to push our own institutions beyond where they've already wanted to go. We know we need that permission to actually become the future that the future already demands of us.
It's very, very interesting word, and giving people that permission can be tremendously empowering. And thank you also. I know it seems evident, but I don't think it's said enough. You need to have it reflected in your peers to make it evident to you. Right, that's the story. That's why I need to act. That makes sense. That's the business case, or whatever, whoever, whichever stakeholder or whichever group we're talking about. Let me come to you, because you, Paulius, you did say you're bringing bees into the city. It sounds like it should be quite an easy ride and that everybody would be as charmed as I would be. But has it been the case? Because you did use the word you've educated people as well. So how does that work?
Yes, so we focus a lot about educating society and communities. And we work as a professional urban beekeeping service provider. We work closely with other businesses. And myself, I believe that businesses can actually shape our future and make the future greener, and businesses can actually do a big impact on how we will see our futures. So yes, there is a lot of skepticism. When we talk about bees in the cities, but we try to tackle that through education, and we try to bring the people to the hives and see that. And meet the bees up close and see that the bees are actually docile and friendly pollinators that actually don't do any harm to us, and that we can actually live together. Bees lived on this planet for 30 million years. We as humans, we don't live half of that. We are guests on this planet, not the bees. So we should be the guests, the nice guests that come to the bees. And so it's all about education.
Absolutely. And I think what's so beautiful about this project, I mean, I don't know if you would agree with me, is that, there's always this sort of, feels like there's this urban-rural divide, which I know sort of in EU terms that really tries to be bridged, but that's such a beautiful example of where, you get this juxtaposition. And I love that. They've been around a lot longer than us, so they might actually want to kick us out very, very soon. If I might come to you, Kelly, so just this issue for you. So first of all, 2 women in the construction business and 2 young women. I would imagine you've had to have some interesting conversations with interesting groups of stakeholders and to get this up and running. Tell us.
100%. And I mean, it doesn't help that I'll illustrate this. We're not gifted in height either, my sister and I. So when we walk into a room, people immediately assume our dad or the owner of the company is coming behind us, you know? So there's having to convince people that this is a business run by two young women. And then you also have to then explain or educate people, which speaks to your point that the education and training that your house will not melt when it's hot, or it will not burn when there's a fire. So there's a lot of credibility building as well in terms of product testing, certification, all of that, you know. So you have to constantly convince people as to show them that this is a cross-industrial solution. You're taking the waste space and you're integrating construction into that space. So it's a lot of stakeholders that we had to talk to. It's a lot of convincing that we had to do. And there's something important that the commissioner said earlier about policy and legislation having to catch up with innovation. I believe one part is very true in that the government can come with the policies and can create that environment. However, we as business, we as individuals also have to help in the implementation. So what we do is something like this. Today, I have made a noise about the fact that I got this wonderful opportunity to be here, to my government, to the country, to say, this is what we need to be doing. The information that I've received here makes me feel like I'm an ambassador for the EU in South Africa, because I'm spreading this to say, these are the tangible things. In the last 2 days, we've been fortunate to meet with a number of EU representatives, and when we talk about the challenges and how we had to convince people, you get to learn that it's two different nations, two different worlds, but the challenges are the same. You know, when we talk about having to convince people that just transition involves everyone on the day-to-day, and there is this vacuum between the two because they're saying government has all these policies. Now we are the guys who are on the ground to say, let us implement them and hold government accountable and ensure implementation takes place.
Absolutely. Just again, pop in and feel free to pop in. I only keep my eye on the clock. We just under 30 minutes. There are a couple of other areas, as I said, that I'd want to explore, the leadership aspect and how you've changed. But let me get Kate. Do you want to ask or comment on anything you've heard from the other two? Please come in. Yes.
I'd love to. And I'm so innovators like Kedibone and Paulius are the creators of the enterprises of the future, right? And many of today's companies that dominate the European and world landscape, I believe they won't exist in the future because some of them will not be able to transform in the way that transformation needs to happen. And we're going to see a generation of new enterprises that are founded exactly like these with the purpose in mind. They're starting with an ecological restoration purpose and they're designed to make it happen. I would love to hear from Kedibone, for example. How are you finding finance and the mainstream market meeting your product? Are you finding it's possible to just introduce a circular product into the market, or what needs to really make this fly and also be replicable by others to follow your lead?
100%. So it initially, about 3 years ago, if you told me that I'd be sitting here today, I would have laughed in your face, you know, with this product. But we have been able to see, we have seen in our journey a lot of both companies and government come to us and say, what do you need to grow this? You know, because I believe we get into times, what Kate is rightfully saying, where we see that some entities will not survive where we go in terms of the transformation route that needs to take place. So you see government more eager to take that step forward. I mean, with policies that are coming, such as the Green Deal, you know, this policy, this piece of document has actually created a different opportunity, stream of opportunities and stream of investment. So market has been very receptive, surprisingly so, because it is disrupting one of the most traditional industries, and it's been done in such a way that it is unapologetic, because talking about restoring the environment, like you're saying, that we're visitors here. Now it's no longer a nice to have. We have to do it. So we really are seeing a lot of market receptiveness, a lot of funding opportunities, both locally and internationally. We receive funding from different governments without even applying, where somebody might have heard from us from such an opportunity. And, you know, that just shows how the world is willing to move forward and how the world is willing to transform. And in terms of being replicable, Very much so, very much so. It's really because what's nice about this, when I said I would go from my auditing job and come on a Friday to work on site at home, we started this in my mother's yard. It's a very small yard. And so what that allowed us to do is also develop the machinery that's required to make the product from small scale to where we are now through expansion. So it has really allowed us to show that you can replicate this thing at different scales.
Yeah. Thank you. And can I just pick up on that? And thank you for that excellent question, Kate. And also tying with that with something that the Commissioner said about policy and sort of the right legislation and the right support for the scale up, which is often the difficulty. How do you see that, Paulius? Because you mentioned you're already expanding into other countries. I'm sure the Netherlands would greet you with open arms, it sounds like, from Kate with your project. But how have you found that from the funding perspective and kind of getting that momentum rolling and to expand?
So from my perspective, as we are a business, we focus on working with more clients. So we don't rely much on what is provided from the government side, but we try to be sustainable from our own activities. So we understand the need for some businesses of these grants, and we feel that they are needed, the support. But from my perspective, I say that it's always best to find ways to be sustainable from your own activities, so that your own activities can actually sustain your future.
Thank you. Anything? Please feel free. Anybody want to pop in? You're not?
Yeah.
Yes?
Funny enough, we had the conversation to say that it is important, funding is important. We cannot deny it at any scale. However, one of the most important things is being self-sustaining, because to always be looking and waiting for funding will have you focus less on the business of the business. So it's really important that you're self-sustaining in getting all that support and getting all that. I believe one of the most important things is that policy, the framework, so that enabling environment that will allow you to be sustainable. However, funding does it has a very, very, very importance in running your business.
Do you want to? Yes? Thank you.
So I fully agree, and I think one part always can be funding, and it can be used for different purposes, but probably at the very beginning of business when you're trying to scale it up. Now, what's very important is exactly the environment that would allow actually to keep the bees on the rooftops of skyscrapers around the Europe, and there would be no obstacles to that, or to actually build houses with a completely new product and so on, because as it was mentioned, there is many issues as regards the security and etc. So that's what's key actually. And if we really want to achieve at the end of the day really that transformation, those businesses who are the first ones, the pioneers in this sort of transition, they have to be awarded, incentivized with the policies. Therefore, I think our circular economy action plan and the package of policies which we have drafted really perfectly illustrates that. For example, if you are a textile company, and already today you are a responsible company who are trying to innovate, and innovation costs money, and produce, for example, from recycled content, or actually collect and ensure that the clothes that you produce, they do not end up in landfilling and incineration. That's a huge cost. That's huge additional operational costs. So I think the role of politicians very clear is to make sure that there is a level playing field, and that those who are doing the right things already, they would feel that yes, there is a level playing field, and that they are rewarded and they get to enjoy this first mover's advantage. And this is what we're trying to create for the European businesses, because very clearly that, by starting the journey of the Green Deal, it meant a lot of work for our chemicals company, for our textiles or automotive industry. But clearly we have to ensure that there is everyone else on board. I'm happy that more and more countries actually have the 2030, 2050 goals. And that change can only be reached if everyone is on board. Europe on its own cannot reach the change.
Indeed. And talking of everyone, do you mind, can I just come back to you, and feel free to raise your hand if you want to come in. I don't have to keep this sort of prescriptively questions to you, but when I just go back to the photos you showed at the beginning, Kate, and here we've got, two very young and impressive, business leaders here but just to be clear, because some of the words that came in that word cloud, I think you saw them, were, anxious was the biggest word in the beginning. How do you feel? Doom, frustrated. I mean, we are not expecting everybody to go away and set up a green business, are we? Indeed, this is all about taking some kind of action that can make you feel that you are part of a transition while we wait for, I think you said, the policy to catch up with this new economy. I mean, you must see this in the change makers that you work with.
Yes, because I'm working with the people who have chosen or found themselves forced to turn that anxiety, that sense of doom and frustration that, thank goodness we feel it. I mean, if we didn't feel it, we would be so lost. People who feel this are right. This is where we are. And then what are we going to do with that emotion? And we need to translate it into action in our own lives. And there are things each one of us can do. Some people decide to set up a phenomenal brick company or keep bees on the roofs. Others say, I'm going to take this into my town council meeting. I'm going to take it into my community. I'm going to retrofit. I'm going to meet up with my neighbors. Let's retrofit our street together. Other people are teachers and bring it in the classroom. I think the first thing each one of us can do is ask ourselves, what are the networks of influence in my life? Mm-hmm. Who am I in this world? If I'm a parent, what can I do with respect to the school? How I take my kids to school? If I work in the European Commission, what can I do to raise the ambition of the team and the department that I'm in? Because as the commissioner says, politics always needs that catch up, and there's some pressure from outside, and there's must be the moral force and the pressure and the ambition from within, so we can be change makers from within. There's an amazing group from across the European Commission who contacted us 2 years ago and said, we're for bringing donut economics into the European Commission. Let's rename DG Grow. Let's call it DG Donut or DG Thrive. Let's bring the institution up to the times.
I'm sure you can hear the little in the front row. Look, they're actually about to sort. They're going to do that now.
Excellent, because the Commission has said the goal by 2050 is living well within planetary boundaries. That is DG Thrive. It needs to be set up. And the more that there are change makers, and I know there are many, people working within the Commission who say, come on, let's use our moral power and our ability to move our organization forward. That is how institutions change. So it's people who get into action in their own lives, how they eat, how they travel, how they take a holiday, where they think it's good to take a holiday, how we invest and divest and protest and volunteer, and how we bring these values into the workplace. We are all change makers.
Thank you very much for that. I don't know, I mean, I was going to come to you with questions, but I'm going to let you, does anybody want to pop in before I nail you with a question? No? Oh, look, you've got these lovely open faces. No, you're not. I was going to, again, come back to this issue because I think it's important. We have to keep, there is so much talk in the media, and not enough probably, with everything that's gone on with COVID and, the crisis in Ukraine. And we have to make sure this doesn't slip off the agenda. And we do need powerful leaders to do that. I don't mean shouty powerful, obviously, but that level of leadership is critical. And I think for people to take action, they need to feel that and see it. How does that sort of drive you in your life, either as a leader, or do you get inspired by others? How do you see that role? Paulius, yeah.
Yes, I truly agree that there is a need to have good leaders around us and to be good leaders as well. For me, a good example of good leader is Lord Robert Baden-Powell. Myself, I'm a scout. From very young age, I've been part of scout organizations, and that's where the love for nature comes for me. And Lord Robert Baden-Powell was always saying to be showing good example by doing, to be a leader in action, to actually do initiatives and actually do stuff. So for me, it's all about that, and I relate this to all of the current discussion that we are discussing now as well. So like in the terms of cities being greener, our planet being greener in general, and saving the bees, helping the bees as well, other pollinators, we have to do stuff. We have to show example. We have to lead by example. So yeah, that's...
Thank you. Thank you. I love it that you said such powerful words and then you went, yeah, that's it. Well, thank you for that. Absolutely. Lead by example. And indeed, Lord Baden-Powell, citing that he founded the Scouts, correct? Yes, indeed. So tell me, from your perspective, Kelly-Bonnie, I mean, it doesn't have to be an answer to that in terms of leadership, but, you know, who inspires you? How do you keep that energy going? And how you manage that relationship you have. You're both leaders with your sister, and whether that translates into the way that you communicate with those with whom you come into contact. Tell me your thoughts.
So for me, an example of a leader is anyone who is willing to take charge of whatever situation they find themselves in. When I inform my parents that I'm leaving my very nice job to literally go collect people's garbage and make something of it, my mother immediately said to me, what support do you need? My father was there going with us to the landfills to go and collect this plastic waste. So they took charge in that situation. And looking at what's happening in the last 2 days, we were talking yesterday about Ukraine and the challenges that they're facing. However, we're still pushing the green agenda in the midst of that. For me, that is leadership, where you are able to take those courageous steps regardless of your surroundings. And even with my sister and I, which is part of the conversation we were having earlier, is that we had to go for business coaching so that we could understand what leadership is, where we have positioned ourselves, and how do we interact with different people. Because as a leader, you find yourself in different situations. The commissioner was saying he's been in office for 2.5 years, if I heard correctly. And in the last 2.5 years, it's only been one crisis after another. But as a leader, you stand in that situation and you figure out how you make it work. So for me, it's everyday action that people take in order to take charge of their situation, but also make a difference. And looking at the green space, I'm finding quite a lot of leadership and pioneers that, such as Kate herself. When you listen to the work that Kate is doing, that for me is a leader. So in every single day, I believe I'm one of the most fortunate people, because I meet probably 10 leaders in a day. And this is not powerful people, but it's in everyday situations.
Thank you. Anyone want to jump in? We've got sort of 12, 13 minutes. Anybody? Yes, Kate. Oh. Well, that's hilarious. You raised your hand, he reached for the microphone, and now I'm stuck because he's the commissioner, but you're Kate Raworth. Okay, Kate, you are being allowed to go first. Go for it.
Thank you. Well, I'm really inspired by the leadership that's sitting there on the stage in Kelly-Bonnie, the leadership of a young woman from South Africa setting up a construction company. That is amazing. I'm going to bring a different kind of leadership that really inspires me. I'm inspired by Extinction Rebellion. I'm inspired by Black Lives Matter, by the Me Too movement, by Fridays for Future. And the reason I'm inspired by these movements is we've all heard of the names of the founders, but they are just the founders. Without all of the people, it would not be a movement. It would be a sole child in front of the Swedish parliament. I'm really inspired by the incredible self-organizing millions of people who get involved in these movements, who make it all happen. And the realization that it's the critical mass of voices that we are all in together, bringing a moral power. As the commissioner said, the Green Deal has been influenced by Fridays for Future. We know so many of the changes that are being made in the world are influenced by these mass social movements, and they have a huge history, from the suffragettes to Gandhi to the civil rights movement. These movements are so critical to social change, and I love the collective leadership that they create.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
I think that's, was very well said, and that's probably the point which I wanted to make, that the leadership that actually really inspires us at the end of the day is by those who take a collective responsibility. Even so, we live in the world which is now very much focused on those individual achievements, especially if you look at social network and etc. But in the end of the day, COVID was a good highlight of that, when not only some individuals, but even countries reacted by really, buying toilet paper and pasta and closing themselves down and hoping that, whatever is happening behind my door is just going to bypass. But we saw that it's not the case. And those who really fought collectively about how we should get out of it all together, and we were very lucky with vaccines which could be shared around the globe, really finding the way out of it. Same is with the crisis in Ukraine. We must think only collectively, and we can get out of it collectively. And in the end of the day, Green Deal. Green Deal can only be success if we have everyone on board, and that transition is just to everyone. And it will require enormous effort, lots of patience, lots of conversation, lots of explanation, because yes, people do like to ask for a change, but when the moment of change comes, very often it says, wait, I didn't subscribe to that. And when it comes to for example, our farming, it's going to have to go through the huge transition. And if we won't be there, if there are local leaders, inspirational people who could inspire the change won't be there, it will be very difficult and most likely not going to happen. So we need to always, look for that collective good, which can be shared, which can be understood by everyone, and that will, of course, drive the change itself very, very, very quickly.
Thank you. And in the light of that, in the light of how all of this fits together, the policy, the politicians, the collective action, the individual action, the green businesses, the stuff that you do, just as you were saying, Kate, decide who are your networks, what can you do in your daily life. Here's a question for a quick one, and you can even talk from your own country basis. Do we have enough positive stories, or is it just doom? Going back to the word cloud, doom, frustration, fear, is there enough positive stories in the media to support this transition? Or are we still, the urgency has to be there. You said it yourself, Kate, we have to be angry, we should be afraid, we need that also to drive the action. But is there enough? Look at those amazing stories we heard in the LIFE programme yesterday. Is there enough of positive stuff that can actually change a little bit how it sits and how we feel about it in terms of action? I don't know maybe you can talk from your own country perspective, Paulius.
There are quite a lot of stories, good example stories every day in the news. And I think Commissioner Sinkevičius we share the same country and would agree that in Lithuania we get in the news quite a lot of young startups, young entrepreneurs, and young people who do initiatives and who share the stories. Same from our perspective. We received quite a lot of attention in the past few years with our activities of urban beekeeping in Lithuania, and we do that by doing so. For example, on May the 20th of May, World Bee Day, we gifted city of Vilnius 80 different wildflower plants in the middle of the city for the biodiversity in the urban environment for the bees, and we received attention from that. And then people who attended the event, they came back home and they planted the flowers at home. So it's a beautiful initiative that spreads across.
Thank you. Kate, how do you in the UK and the overall narrative? Is there enough? I don't just mean what government's doing, but that tone in which we are continuing this conversation. Do we need to shift it a bit?
I think, well, certainly in the UK, too much of our media is obsessed with reality TV and government gossip. And I'm not at all proud of what our government has made stories, Partygate, and we are focusing on scandals, which we should focus on until they're gone, but it's not enabling us to actually focus on the future that we need to create. So yes, we need more. I don't expect to find them in the media other than a couple of newspapers. I look for them actually online. I find them, people discussing them and sharing them online rather than in the published newspapers. And it's not yet become clear enough and systemic enough for the media to report about it in a way that shows this is a seed of the future that we're all going to create.
Yeah.
What this enterprise is doing, what this community is doing, this is what we're all going to be doing in the future. It needs to be much clearer that these are seeds of the future that we must bring about. And I think change is always hardest just before we make it.
Yeah.
We're aware of everything we're going to lose, and we can't quite understand everything we're going to gain. And I think it's crucial to recognize, as we stand at a moment before change, as the Commission was saying, people say, oh, I wasn't ready for this. It's hardest just before we make it, because on the other side of it, we actually say, why did that take us so long? And now all the benefits of making this change become clear, and the companies that we can start and the lifestyles we can lead. So we mustn't get stuck at that point where we know everything we think we're going to lose and we can't quite imagine what we're going to gain. And that's why we need these stories of possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely, they are the seeds. And you're right. That's what I think the nub of what I was getting at, that aren't out there enough. Just a couple of words, because I've got one more question in these closing minutes I'd like to put to you all. So just, do you want to give us a flavour of, you touched upon it earlier, in South Africa?
So similar to what you said earlier, is there is too much of the bad news, everything that is not good. So our experience has been exactly the same, where there isn't enough focus on this looming crisis. And I call it looming because it's just not getting the recognition. But I believe we're really facing a crisis. In the last few years in South Africa, we've gone from droughts to floods. We've had extremely high temperatures to extremely low temperatures. So it is no longer, it's a reality, you know. So, but we're not seeing it on the media. We really are not. And that's why when you started the word cloud, the words would not be those words if we knew the successful stories that are being casted out there by the media. So I think there's a lot of action that we're doing on the ground in terms of fighting climate change, not enough, but it is not being put out there as much as the scandals and the reality TV and all the other things.
Thank you. Commissioner, I'm going to give you just 1 or 2 minutes, just if you want to say anything else to round up, and then I'm going to ask each of these good people for the briefest of outros, and then we will be wrapping this session. Over to you.
It's dangerous path for a politician to talk about if there is enough positive or negative news on the media, so I won't go there. I will just say that, you know, at the end of the day, we live in an era when there is so much information, basically from one side to another, and it's up to us. And I think that should be already one of the skills when you hire people, if the people manage to get through that information and get the required information. So I think it's a big task, but this is very much a needed task. So it's about, you know, seeing that glass half full or half empty. If we want to see the half full, if we really believe in transition, we will find the ways to pick up the news that will inspire us for the day, for a month, and for our action.
Thank you very much. Thank you. A last word in 20 seconds from you and from you and from Kate. I'll start with Kate, if I may. A last word, something you didn't get to say, something you want to inspire people with. 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Europe, on a mission to live well within planetary boundaries. Like this, it's obviously time to say goodbye, DG Grow. Your job has been done. You did it well, but it's time to move on. It's time for DG Thrive. Welcome to the 21st century.
Thank you. I actually prefer DG Donut, but all right, we'll go with DG
Donut,
Thrive. That was fabulous. Paulius, for you, please, last 20 seconds.
Yeah, we can all help the bees as individuals. Let's plant bee-friendly plants in our gardens, in our balconies. Let's stop using pesticides in our gardens. Let's build water baths for the bees. It's so simple. We can all do that with our children, with our friends and family. And if you have the guts and if you have the passion, let's bring the bees to the city on your rooftops. And me and my team at UrbanBee.lt, we can help you.
Very good. That was nice. Last 5 seconds for you.
Just want to thank everybody who's taken the last 2 days to be here. Everybody who's sitting here now are heroes in their own regard because they've taken the time to be part of a very important conversation. But everybody who is ensuring that we recycle at home, we make a difference throughout the world, because this is another crisis that we're going to face that's going to bring the globe together again, like the coronavirus did. So thank you to everyone who takes action in ensuring that we fight climate change.
Thank you. Can you please give an extremely warm round of applause to these fabulous speakers of this closing session? Kate Raworth, Kedibone, thank you. Paulius, thank you to the Commissioner. All I'm going to say to you now, so that I don't overshoot, is do stay with us. Okay, so big thanks to all of the team at the Commission who inputted to this year's Green Week. There are so many of them. I'm not going to list them. The technical teams, thank you to the audience. You've been absolutely splendid. And thank you to everybody at home. Now, the audience here, don't go away. We want you to scuttle out of here, and we have a very short, really fun 20-minute celebration. It's really cute for the EU Eco-label. We need you there, and then we can release you for cocktails and all sorts of lovely things. But it's been an utter pleasure. Thank you. You've been fabulous. Thank you very, very much. I wish you all a very, very good day, and be the change makers. That's the deal, I think. Now you may applaud. Thank you.